Hi, I'm Brayden Kuebler with OHS TV Studio for a Local Legend Spotlight with Gerry Ebker. How are you doing today, Jerry?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm awesome. It's awesome to hear. I looked over what you've done, and you've actually have a huge resume. There's a lot of awesome stuff that you've done, not only here for Owensville, but like outside of this town with jobs and whatnot. So I'll just have a few questions here, and we'll start right off with how was your time here, like during high school? How was that? What was it like?
Well, um, I'm sure it's quite different than it is nowadays,
Yeah.
but school was much smaller. Actually, we were split between the current administration building and the current library, which was later became the 3 through 5 center.
Yeah.
So we kind of shuttled back and forth depending on classes between the two. But uh, it was a good experience. I lived on a farm, so the number of activities I could participate in was fairly limited. I didn't get to participate in sports or some of that stuff. I did participate in a lot of musical stuff, band, chorus, things of that sort. Um, so I guess school was primarily classes.
Yeah.
Uh, Enjoyed the people. People were friendly. Had a good time, and on the other hand, really nothing spectacular.
Yeah. Did you have like a favorite subject or something that really stood out to you?
I didn't at the time, although I probably took more math classes than most kids, and I did well. Later, when I was in college, I found that I had a particular aptitude for mathematics, so I stuck with it. Um, in high school, I had everything from typing to math to chemistry to what have you. So I had a pretty broad background.
Yeah. Were there any clubs during your time here?
Uh, Not really. Not
Really?
really. We didn't have any clubs.
Hmm. Interesting.
This is so far back we didn't even have football. So
Oh, really?
yeah.
Wow. Huh. Moving on. What was it like for college? Like, what do you have to say about that?
College was a great experience. Really broadening out. I mean, it's the first time I'd really been away from a small town
Hmm.
into a college environment, living away from home. Um, Classes were great. So was the experience of finding really what you're interested in, where your passion is, what you're good at, what you want to do afterwards. Um, a little bit challenging in the sense that I probably didn't have as much financial support as most kids. My parents didn't fully agree with my decision to go to college. No one in the family had ever been to college before. And so when I left for college, I had $300 in my pocket, which I had saved up from working through my high school years. And that was it. So that and a lot of hard work got me through college.
Yeah. That's awesome. Oh, that's actually so cool. I love hearing that. Like, just coming from really nothing and like odds stacked against you and all of that. And they'll hear here in a second that you've done a lot with those opportunities that you almost gave yourself.
It wasn't always fun.
No.
Some of it I'm sure I wouldn't just as soon not repeat.
Mhm.
But I think at least kept my life in perspective in appreciating what I achieved and maybe better financial situation later on.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me, what have you done since college? What have
Well,
jobs been like?
I guess I could say I've only had one job, and that is I went to work for IBM out of graduate school, and worked for them for 31 years and retired. My first job was working at the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston, Texas. IBM had just won a contract with NASA to provide all the computers and the software to put a man on the moon.
Um,
And interestingly enough, thinking about how the world changes, my first job was working in a career that didn't even exist when I left for college. I think it was my sophomore year of college that the Russians put Sputnik in orbit.
yeah.
And so half a dozen years later, I'm working in the space program, and it's a totally new field, which was exciting because um, We'd never done it before, so we were all learning as we went along. And most of us were kids right out of college and graduate school, so we were truly on-the-job training, learning as we went.
Yeah.
Tremendously exciting. As we approached 1969, as President Kennedy had said, we'll land on the moon by before the end of the decade. We were all working around the clock, 7 days a week. In fact, my wife and I, family, lived just outside of the Spacecraft Center in a subdivision called Clear Lake. And that spring, all of the Little League teams were coached by our wives because we were working around the clock and couldn't accept that kind of responsibility. Wow. So it just kind of put things in perspective. I often call the space program as the largest expression of team sports because it was us against the Russians.
Yeah.
And we took it very personally. I mean, we worked hard, and it was exciting, but it was a real sense of accomplishment when we did land on the moon.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. I mean, that's one thing that definitely jumped out to me after seeing all that you've done. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. So.
It was a great way to start a career.
Oh, yeah.
Later on, when I was responsible for all of IBM's business with the federal government, a lot of my key executives were people that had grown up in the space program because these were young people who had received a lot of responsibility very early in life and learned how to handle it. And so it was really great preparation for their careers later on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so with that job, you had to work a lot with technology, right?
Yeah, surely.
So what has it been like seeing technology evolve so fast since?
It's, technology is one of those things that you work full time to try and keep up.
Yeah.
And after a while, I went into management, and at some point you have to make a choice. Am I going to keep up with technology, or am I going to pick up the management skills required to be a good manager? And so you end up having to lose some of the technological skills. But still, I mean, so I think my kids, when they went off to college, had personal computers that had more power than what we used to put a man on the moon.
Yeah.
And so it's changed dramatically. Nowadays, if I need to update my PC, I'll have my son, who has a master's in computer science, come over and do that for me. I have not kept up with PCs and things.
Yeah.
When we were working in the early days, a computer was the size of a room. And so it's just changed very dramatically.
Yeah. I mean, that is so crazy, just like starting from, and it's super interesting to me that you're able to put a man on the moon with, that technology, like you said, the size of a room, and it's not even as powerful as a little handheld one.
Right.
And, I mean, that's awesome.
You learn to use what is available.
Yeah.
And it had to work. That's all we had. And nowadays, you look back, it was pretty primitive. But at the time, that's all that existed.
Yeah. So when did you come back here to Owensville?
I retired at the end of 1993 and moved back here. I didn't really plan to come back here, but as we approached retirement and deciding what we wanted to do, certainly there were deep roots here because the farm where we live, part of it has been in the family since it was homesteaded in 1851. So there's deep roots there with the land. The people in this area are friendly. Certainly it's a very pleasant environment. So we said, why not? Let's come back. Yeah. And so I have to admit that my wife was a little bit hesitant when we moved back. As I was retiring, I was running a very large organization, had a lot of people doing whatever needed to be done. And my wife says, I'm not sure about moving back to a farm. She said, you've got staff people that do everything that you want done. We move back to the farm, there's only going to be me and you, and I don't know that I can do everything. And I told her, it'd be a different life, but we could both adjust and make it do.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. So do you think like Owensville had a deep impact, like through your youth, on like where you went in life, or was that more just like you and like what your mind was telling you and what your heart brought you to?
Kind of hard to really know all the reasons, what happened, why, and what caused them all. I think I think being from Owensville gave me a sense of a challenge, but a good groundwork of people that, you know, good people that work hard. And so I would say between my family and the community, I think developing a good work ethic was certainly one of the foundations. I mean, a factor in any successful venture is how hard you're willing to work. And you know, I had, I mean, as I was saying, we worked around the clock for the space program. I didn't really know what a weekend was, but that didn't bother me because coming off the farm, we worked around the clock all through the week as well. Right. And a lot of people here in Owensville had the same experience. And so working hard was never a question. I think back of all the experiences I had, one time I was asked to perform a particular task where I worked from 6 in the morning until midnight for 45 straight days. But in that, we accomplished what needed to be accomplished. And so, you know, looking back on it, you say, well, you know, that was kind of dumb, working that hard. And even at the time, I didn't even get overtime. I mean, I was strict on straight salary. And I wondered today how many kids would actually be willing to do that. Yeah. But looking back, I just have a sense of accomplishment in that there was a difficult task, and we were able to complete it.
Yeah, that's an amazing mindset to have, and I think that's something that, I don't know, it's like hard to come by a lot nowadays, is that just hard work. It can take you really far. You know, a lot of people I've heard around this school and stuff be like, oh, you were here, you're not going to leave here. Like, you're just going to be here and do, like, what everyone else does, you know? But you were able to, like, on your own, just build this amazing story and this career and all these awesome things.
I have to admit, in all honesty, it wasn't a plan that I had, a life plan that I had when I left Owensville. I majored in mathematics, got a master's degree in mathematics, principally because it was the easiest thing I could do. And so maybe I was basically lazy and took the easy route, which happened to be mathematics in my case. And then couple that with a strong work ethic, it worked out. But I would almost say it's more accidental than a life plan.
Yeah, I mean, that happens though, and it
does. And I think much of life is that way. You know, every decision you make then leads to other decisions, and some positive, some negative. Yeah. But then life, you look back, it's just a series of decisions that you made. And hopefully, in my case, I feel like most of them worked out well. But I also realized that there were also elements of luck or good fortune in there. And so I'm very thankful that things have turned out the way they are. And I am very appreciative of people who have tried perhaps equally hard, and yet the circumstances weren't right, and their results were quite different. And so I can be very empathetic for people in those situations.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are some really wise words. I hope a lot of people take those to heart. So after coming back to Owensville, you've done a lot for the community. You can go into some of that if you'd like.
Well, I guess one of the first one of the tasks I was asked to assist with, the Alumni Association just formed. And after a few years, they had developed about 50 members, had developed a pool of money of maybe, I don't know, a couple $100,000. And they asked me if I would be president. So I took over, and over a period of about 10 years, was able to increase the membership from 50 to 500 and increase the resources from 200,000 to just about $2 million.
Wow. And
all of that money goes for scholarships for high school graduates.
Wow.
So it's helped for a while there. I think for the last 5 years of my presidency, we were giving like 25 scholarships a year. So hopefully we helped a lot of kids.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you did. I mean, that's a crazy jump. That's a leap.
Yeah.
Right?
And then after that, I was asked by the county supervisors to become part of the Gasconade Valley Enterprise Zone. And this is an organization which helps the community by building up commercial interests, either bringing in new companies or expanding existing companies. And taking over the job, one of the first things I did was to interview the heads or leaders of the organizations, the businesses currently in Owensville, particularly in the industrial complex. And when I talked to them, unanimously they said our number one problem is not having bringing in more business. What we need is more housing, because over 30% of our employees are driving more than 30 miles to work. And they're doing that because there isn't sufficient housing in their price range in the community. So worked with Merrimack Regional Planning Commission. We got a state grant to provide the infrastructure, basically the streets, sewers, things like that here in Owensville. Worked with local builders to start building houses, and we built 15 houses. And knowing that as we built them, that at least 50% of them had to be available to low to moderate income people. And so we had to target them for a certain price range. And working with the builders, that was great, and we did all that. We got ready to actually turn the houses over to individuals, and I found out what the real problem was. The problem was that banks were not willing to give loans to people who were low to moderate income. And so we had houses built, we had people that wanted them, but we didn't have loans for these people. Ended up, I personally financed half of the homes in the subdivision. So wow. This was, I don't know, about $400,000 investment on my part.
Wow.
But of all of the loans that I gave out, I think there were like 8 of them originally, all of the people were just very punctual in making their payments, with the exception of one. I had one that was a problem, and I guess the exception always proves the rule. But still, looking back on it, was a good experience.
Yeah.
The houses are still there. Many of the families are still in the same houses they were, and that's almost 25 years ago. So again, it was a good experience.
Yeah.
Let's see. The next one was probably Gasconade Manor. One of your neighbors right here had been in existence for almost 25 years, and frankly, they were having some difficulties, both financial and facilities. And so I was asked to become president of the board there. And we quickly laid out a plan which included 2 phases of construction. We built the new activity center, expanded the rooms, did that first, and then we built the rehab facility. And so we changed maybe a little bit of a dated organization and facility into really truly a modern facility. And I think now Gasconade Manor is probably as good as, with facilities and operation, as good as any nursing home in the state. Yeah. So feel good about that. I guess starting the Gasconade County Math and Science Scholarship was just kind of what I wanted to do was really to encourage kids to go into math and science if they had a mind to. And I thought a competition between Herman and Owensville, which are normally competitive anyway, would be a good way to go about it. And so we did that, and now I guess it's been probably, 15 years, and going well. And again, I look at some of the kids. I mean, we've had kids graduate from Duke, from Harvard, from certainly all the local schools, Mizzou, S&T, and Missouri State. So I think it proved another thing, and it proved that our kids can compete anywhere. And if they're given the chance, they'll do well no matter where they go.
Yeah, that's great. And I was actually going to ask about that, but you just hit it home. But yeah, that's awesome. That's a lot of amazingly generous things that you've done. So
again, I think maybe coming from Owensville, it's not so much what I have and what I do with my stuff. So we've never owned. I mean, we've never been big on buying uh, boats and luxury automobiles and stuff like that. And so if we can help other people in some way, then that's good.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so great. So yeah, that's really all I have. I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Uh, what advice do you have for OHS students graduating and they're going to the next chapter of their life after high school?
I would say you're moving into a very dynamic world, a world that changes very rapidly. And the piece of advice I would have is to continue to learn, develop a habit of continual learning, because you're going to need that to stay up with the world. Experts today say that in your lifetime, you will have 3 to 4 different careers. And that's not jobs, that's careers. And you think about what you have, how much difference you have to know to switch from one career to another. Mm-hmm. And the only way you can do that is just to stay up with things and try and know what's happening, what's developing, and keep asking the question, where am I going to be 5 years, 10 years from now, and what do I have to do to be prepared for that kind of a world? So my advice would be expect change. It's going to occur, and do whatever you can to prepare for it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. But yeah, amazing talk. You've done so much, and so thank you for all of that, and thank you for coming in today.
My pleasure. If it helps in some way, that's great.
It does. It really does. Thank you.